Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Unman Bhattacharya. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate multi-billion-dollar projects in Prayagraj today, also to review preparations for the upcoming Mahakumbh. Grateful nation remembers the martyrs on the 23rd anniversary of the terrorist attack on Parliament of India. China accuses Philippines of provoking trouble in South China Sea. A day ahead of parliamentary vote over Yoon's martial law, voices to impeach Yoon growing stronger. Opposition leader says impeaching Yoon is the best way to restore order. India hockey team thrashes Thailand and Musket, reaches semi-finals of Women's Junior Asia Cup. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Turkey for talks focused on establishing stability in Syria after clashes between forces backed by the U.S. and Turkey erupted in the north.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Turkey for talks focused on establishing stability in Syria. Blinken met Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan at Ankara's Esenboga airport after visiting Jordan on his first trip to the region since Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government was ousted on Sunday. Erdogan and Blinken discussed the latest developments in Syria, with Erdogan calling on the international community to work together for the reconstruction of institutions in Syria. Erdogan also told Blinken that Turkey would take preventive measures in Syria for its national security against all organizations it deems as terrorist. The G7 leaders will meet virtually on Friday to discuss the momentous changes underway in Syria, where the interim government has vowed to institute the rule of law after years of abuses under ousted President Bashar al-Assad. Leaders of the Group of 7 Democratic Powers said they were ready to support the transition to an inclusive and non-sectarian government in Syria. They called for the protection of human rights, including those of women and minorities, while emphasizing the importance of holding the Assad regime accountable for its crimes. The country's constitution and parliament would be suspended during a 3-month transition period. After the fall of Assad's government, Syrians flocked to the infamous prisons where the Assad regime is estimated to have held tens of thousands of detainees. Meanwhile, Blinken said that the United States is working to bring home an American citizen, Travis Timmerman, who was freed from prison earlier in the week. The Syrian leadership said it was ready to cooperate with Washington to look for U.S. citizens disappeared under Assad, including on an ongoing search for U.S. journalist Austin Tice, who was abducted in 2012.
In terms of an American citizen who was found just today, I can't give you any details on exactly what's going to happen, except to say that we're working to bring him home, to bring him out of Syria and to bring him home. But for privacy reasons, I can't share any more detail than that at this point.
Jordan also announced it will host a Syria crisis summit on Saturday that will include foreign ministers from numerous Western and Arab nations as well as Turkey. Bureau Report, DD India.
Russia has established direct contact with the political committee of Syria's Islamist rebel group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov said on Thursday. Bogdanov said Russia hoped to maintain its 2 bases in Syria, a naval base in Tartus and the Khmeimim air base near the port city of Latakia, to keep up efforts against international terrorism. The Russian diplomat added that Moscow has established contacts with the political committee of Syria's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or HTS group and discussed issues ensuring the security of the Russian diplomatic mission and citizens in the country. Russia hoped the group would fulfill its pledges to guard against all excesses, maintain order and ensure the safety of diplomats and other foreigners, he added. With a view to establish order in newly liberated Syria, Jordan is going to organize a Syria Crisis Summit over the weekend. The summit will have participation of foreign ministers from numerous Western and Arab nations, including Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Lebanon, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Qatar, Turkey, USA, and the EU's foreign policy chief and the UN envoy for Syria. Jordan's foreign ministry announced on Thursday that the summit will take place on Saturday in Amman. The Saturday summit will discuss developments in Syria in the perspective of various groups fighting against each other to take control of certain areas after Syria's President Bashar al-Assad fled the country by almost surrendering to the rebels supported by both USA and Turkey. Voices to impeach South Korean President Yoon are going stronger ahead of a parliamentary vote over Yoon's martial law, as the opposition leader Lee Jae-myung said the best way to restore order in the country is to impeach President Yoon. Yoon's decision to impose military rule on the 3rd of December, even if rescinded within 6 hours, seems to have triggered a major crisis in South Korea. Lee called Yoon's remarks a declaration of war against the people and added that impeachment is the fastest and the most effective way to end the confusion. Yoon vowed to fight till the end, blaming the opposition party for paralyzing the government. He also claimed that a North Korean hack into the Election Commission made his party's crushing defeat in an April parliamentary election questionable. Yoon survived the first attempt to impeach him last Saturday, when most of his ruling People Power Party boycotted the vote. Shifting focus to Taiwan-China tension, Taiwan on Friday said that in the past 24 hours, it had detected 12 Chinese military aircraft operating around the island. According to the Defense Ministry, the naval vessels, along with 34 Chinese aircraft, were spotted near Taiwan in the last 24 hours. Beijing has been holding its biggest maritime drills in years, from near the southern islands of Japan to the South China Sea. Taiwan authorities said this week. Around 90 Chinese warships and Coast Guard vessels have been involved in the exercises that include simulating attacks on foreign ships and practicing blockading sea routes. Meanwhile, China's Defense Ministry on Friday broke its silence about days of military activities around Taiwan, saying it was up to China to decide whether or not to hold drills, and the military would not be absent in fighting against separatist forces.
It is the sacred duty of the People's Liberation Army to safeguard the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the state, to safeguard the fundamental interest of the Chinese people, and to safeguard the common interest of compatriots on both sides of Taiwan Strait. Just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. Whether or not to hold exercises and when to hold them is a matter for us to decide on our own according to our own needs and the situation of the struggle.
China has accused the Philippines of provoking trouble in the South China Sea, with US support escalating tensions between the two nations. The accusation, made on Friday by Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson Wu Qian, comes after a week of heightened confrontations over disputed waters. Wu criticized the Philippines for stoking conflicts in the region, claiming that Manila, backed by Washington, is stirring unrest at multiple locations. He also emphasized that the Philippines' territorial claims, defined by international treaties, do not extend to China's Spratly Islands or Scarborough Shoal. This marks the latest in a series of clashes between Beijing and Manila over the South China Sea, increasing geopolitical tensions in the area. And now we go live. Discussion on the glorious journey of 75 years of the Indian Constitution is taking place in the lower house of Parliament.
शासन था और लोकतंत्र था। अध्यक्ष महोदय, मैं अपनी बात को आगे बढ़ाने से पहले संविधान को अंगीकार करने के 75 वर्ष पूरे होने के उपलक्ष्य में इस सदन और समस्त देशवासियों को हार्दिक बधाई देता हूं। अध्यक्ष महोदय, साथ ही भारत की आज़ादी और भारत के संविधान के निर्माण से जुड़े सभी महानुभावों के प्रति कृतज्ञता भी व्यक्त करता हूं और उन सभी को शीश झुकाकर नमन करता हूं। अध्यक्ष महोदय, हमारा संविधान सार्वभौम है, हमारा संविधान सर्वसक्षम है। हमारे संविधान की सार्वभौमिकता और सर्वसक्षमता का अंदाजा इसी बात से लगाया जा सकता है, जहां एक ओर हमारा संविधान स्टेट।
There you heard India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh speaking on a special discussion on the 75th anniversary of Constitution of India. So 75 years of the Constitution of India. That is the title of a special discussion which is currently on in Lok Sabha, which is the lower house of Parliament of India. Moving on now, the United States welcomed the accord reached by Somalia and Ethiopia to end regional tensions sparked by Addis Ababa's push for maritime access. The two countries had been at loggerheads since landlocked Ethiopia struck a deal in January with Somalia's breakaway region of Somaliland to lease a stretch of coastline for a port and military base. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken added Washington was looking forward to the technical negotiations that would spell out Ethiopia's sea access while respecting Somalia's territorial integrity. French President Emmanuel Macron has postponed the nomination of a new Prime Minister until Friday morning. 8 days after French MPs ousted Michel Barnier as Prime Minister in a no-confidence vote, Macron cut short a visit to Poland on Thursday and had been expected to come up with a new name on his return. Macron said 2 days ago that he wanted to name a new head of government within 48 hours. The new team is due to replace the one led by Michel Barnier, who resigned last week after far-right and leftist lawmakers voted to topple his government. Macron has vowed to remain in office until his second term ends in 2027, despite Barnier's downfall last week. Pro-European Union protesters take to the streets for the 15th consecutive day in Tbilisi as Georgians rally against the newly elected Georgian government they consider illegitimate, protesting the government's decision to delay European Union membership talks amid a post-election crisis. The unrest in the region begins after Prime Minister's announcement on Thursday that Georgia would not seek accession talks with the EU until 2028 ignited a furious reaction from the opposition. Chaotic scenes unfolded for hours as police chased defiant protesters through the streets of central Tbilisi, beating them and making arrests. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is recovering positively from his latest surgery on Thursday. Lula underwent a second procedure on Thursday following his emergency surgery earlier this week to relieve bleeding in his skull. The president had an intracranial drain removed without complications and remains in the ICU, doctors informed, adding he was lucid and speaking normally as he received family visits. President Lula will remain in intensive care and is expected to be discharged from Sao Paulo's Sírio-Libanês hospital early next week, when he might resume his presidential activities. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. India's Ministry of Defence signs a contract with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited to procure 12 Su-30 MKI fighter jets. Hardik Pandya ranks as India's most searched sportsperson and ranked 7th amongst the most searched sportspersons worldwide. And we'll show you how Australia's Sydney is sparkling in the Christmas season.
we are going to be talking about India's pivotal comprehensive strategic partnership with a key country in the Indo-Pacific, Australia.
I think Australia has really benefited from India's shift towards multi-alignment.
I think India and Australia have a really strong ability to try and keep trade free and democratic values flowing in the Indian Ocean.
I think that our Indigenous culture in Australia, which is super important to recognise, has a lot of ties to Indian culture and philosophy.
Some of my best friends in Australia are Indian, and they have shown me the best side of humanity, I think.
Welcome back. You're watching Need India Live with me, Munmun Bhattacharya. India remains concerned at the evolving situation in West Asia, and attacks against commercial vessels in and around the Red Sea threaten freedom of navigation and impact our trade. That's what the government said in Parliament on Thursday. Minister of State for External Affairs Kirti Vardhan Singh, in a written response to a query, also said the government has raised the issue with the countries in the region and the Indian missions are closely monitoring the situation to mitigate its impact. The minister, Kirti Vardhan Singh, was asked about the details of special measures that are being taken by the government to safeguard India's energy security. In the lower house of Parliament, Minister of External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar made a detailed statement regarding the recent developments and disengagement efforts in the India-China border areas. In a statement, he highlighted that the final disengagement agreements had been completed, specifically concerning the areas of Depsang and Demchok. He emphasized that the understanding reached as part of these agreements ensures that Indian security forces would be able to access all the patrolling points in Depsang.
I gave a very detailed statement on the disengagement and recent developments in the India-China border areas. In that statement, I highlighted that the last of the disengagement agreements had taken place which pertained to Depsang and Demchok. I also would like to convey to the Honourable Member, it was in the statement as well, that the understanding envisages that Indian security forces would be going to all the patrolling points in Depsang and would be going to the limit, eastward limit, which has historically been our patrolling limit in that part.
Dr. S. Jaishankar also responded to a question in Parliament regarding India-Pakistan relations. He stated that, like with any other neighbouring country, India would like to have good relations with Pakistan. However, he emphasized that India seeks to have ties that are free of terrorism.
In terms of improving ties with Pakistan, like any other neighbour, we would like to have good ties. But like with any other neighbour, we would also like to have ties free of terrorism. So this has been the position of the government. We have made it very clear that it is for the Pakistani side to show that they are changing their behavior of the past and that if they don't, of course, there are implications for the relationship and for them. So I think the ball is very much in Pakistan's court in this regard.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Prayagraj, a city in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh, to inspect the development works for Mahakumbh Mela 2025. Prime Minister will inaugurate and launch multiple development projects worth around 5,500 crore rupees at Prayagraj. He will inaugurate various projects for Mahakumbh 2025, including rail and road projects. In line with his commitment towards Swachh and Nirmal Ganga, Prime Minister will also inaugurate projects related to it. He will also inaugurate various infrastructure projects related to drinking water and power. Prime Minister will also inaugurate major temple corridors to ensure ease of access to devotees and also boost spiritual tourism. India remembers the martyrs who sacrificed their lives while defending Parliament House from a dastardly terror attack on this day in 2001. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and several other political leaders and ministers of the country reached Parliament and paid tributes to the fallen Jawans to mark 23 years since the Parliament attack. In a major push for Atmanirbhar Bharat mission, the Ministry of Defence signed a contract with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited to procure 12 Su-30 MKI fighter jets. These aircraft will feature 62.6% domestic content with key components to be manufactured by the Indian defence industry. This marks another milestone in India's journey towards self-reliance, boosting the capabilities of the Indian armed forces. This is good news for the economy as India has achieved a remarkable milestone in its economic journey with gross foreign direct investment inflows reaching an impressive $1 trillion since April 2000. This landmark achievement was bolstered by a nearly 26% rise in FDI to $42.1 billion during the first half of the current fiscal year. Initiatives like Make in India, liberalized sectoral policies and the goods and services tax have enhanced investor confidence, while competitive labor costs and strategic incentives continue to attract multinational corporations. Global sales of fully electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles rose for a 7th consecutive month in November, jumping 32% year-on-year for a third consecutive record high. China continued to lead sales growth, accounting for almost 70% of the total electric vehicle sales in the month, while registrations in Europe showed a marginal decline. In the United States and Canada, EV sales were up 16.8%, while Europe had sales of 0.28 million, down slightly year-on-year, but up 7.7% from October. In the rest of the world, sales were flat against November 2023. Sports news now. Indian hockey team has progressed to semi-finals of Women's Junior Asia Cup after they thrashed Thailand 9-0 in their fourth pool match in Muscat. Deepika Kumari stole the show with an impressive 4 goals, while Kanika Sewaj delivered a hat-trick to seal the win. India started the game strong, dominated the possession and continued with a scoring spree. Thailand players were unable to fend off attacks, resulting in the lopsided encounter. India will face Japan in the semi-finals on 14th December. They have also sealed a spot in the next year's Junior World Cup to be held in Chile. Indian cricketer Hardik Pandya is the most searched Indian sportsperson across the globe in 2024 as per the Google Year in Search. The India all-rounder is ranked 7th among the most searched sportspersons worldwide. He made vital contributions to India's win in the T20 World Cup against South Africa. While cricket dominated the search trends in India this year, no Indian sports team made it to the top 10 among the most searched teams in the world. In sports trends in India, the Indian Premier League, T20 World Cup and the Olympics occupied the top 3 slots. Josh Hazlewood will return to Australia's playing 11 for the third test against India in Brisbane after overcoming the side strain that ruled him out of the second match. Captain Pat Cummins confirmed that Scott Boland will make way for Hazlewood despite the Paceman's 5 wickets in the last match, which Australia won. Hazlewood's inclusion is the only change to the home side, but Australia have some headache. Steve Smith has only managed 19 runs in 3 visits to the crease. On the other hand, India are beset by worries over the form of captain Rohit Sharma and the fitness of strike bowler Jasprit Bumrah. Rohit Sharma managed just 9 runs as the tourists crashed to a 10-wicket defeat in the Adelaide Test. Bumrah went down to the turf grabbing at his thigh while bowling in the last Test. The paceman did not bowl at training until a half hour on Thursday. Another defeat for India would mean their hopes of reaching the World Test Championship final is out of their hands. The 5-test series is levelled at 1-1. Forward Rasmus Højlund scored twice as Manchester United came back from a goal down to secure a 2-1 win against Victoria Pleasant in the Europa League. Højlund cancelled out the advantage with the first goal and sealed the win with another strike just before full-time for United's third consecutive win in the competition. United remain unbeaten after 6 games. They have moved to the 5th position in the standings with 12 points and continue to eye an automatic qualification spot in the last 60. Christmas light displays and decorations thrilled onlookers in Sydney as the festive season kicked off in the Australian harbour city. Sydney's largest Catholic cathedral, St. Mary's, was illuminated with colourful projections portraying scenes from Charles Dickens' story, A Christmas Carol.
Despite having so little, they cherish love and fun.
India's public broadcaster Prasar Bharati has recently launched Waves, entering the field of OTT platforms. Waves provides a complete infotainment ecosystem to digital media and OTT audiences. So if you also want great content for free, then download Waves today. That's all in this edition of DD India Live, but do share your thoughts with us on the news of the day. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. This is Munmun Bhattacharya from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.